Hey, guys. Welcome to Building This Community.
This is your city business and policy development podcast. We're your hosts,
Luke Patrick
and Andrew Klump. Welcome to this week's episode of Building This Community. Today we have two guests, Rudy Ellis, who is a labor and employment attorney for Dinsmore, and John Weber, who is a corporate attorney. Both of which are on the board of Ypal. Rudy is the president-elect, and John, I believe, is the secretary. With that said, how are you all doing today?
I'm doing well, Andrew. I'm doing well. I'm just happy to be here with you guys. I'm glad that we could come on and share whatever wisdom I guess we have.
Great. So I guess we can start with you first, Rudy. Do you want to just tell us a little bit more about your background? I gave a little bit, but would you mind going in a little more detail?
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Rudy Ellis. Lived in Louisville pretty much my entire life. I went to Indiana University for undergrad. Thoroughly enjoyed my 4 years up there. Got a great education. Came back. Took a year off in between undergrad. Happened to be probably the best year to do that because it was the year that Louisville won the national title that I went to and I saw and actually happened. The Sugar Bowl that we won. Went to law school at U of L, got involved with the Student Bar Association there, ended up in my third year president of the Student Bar Association there, which is essentially the law school's student government. Graduated, started practicing insurance defense. So I represented people that were in car accidents or owned buildings where slip and falls happened. And then about a year and a half ago, I transitioned to do labor and employment work over at Dinsmore and Shoal. And then also, I moonlight as president for Ypal. So that's, a lot of fun in and of itself. So that's a little bit about me.
All right, that's great. John, can you tell us a little bit about you?
My name is John Weber. I, too, was born and raised in Louisville. I went to Manual High School and then went all the way across the street to U of L, where I was a McConnell Scholar, Harlan Scholar, and held various leadership positions on campus and in the community and still remain involved today. And Rudy already beat me to the, go cards homerism, but hopefully I'll find a way to get it in here in a little bit. After that, I went on to do Teach for America in Nashville, where I taught 12th grade government as a 22-year-old, which was very interesting and of course, interesting time to be in Nashville. And then came back to Louisville for law school, where Rudy and I were in the Student Bar Association together. He actually got me involved in a national leadership position with the American Bar Association. And then where I met our two wonderful hosts. So going on from that, I became a commercial real estate attorney and continue to do that type of work as well as corporate, like you mentioned. Within Ypal, I am the secretary, and so this is my second term in that position, and I act as general counsel for the organization. Otherwise, involved in other community organizations, New Leaders Council, my church, St. Matthew's Baptist, and others.
So we've definitely heard that you guys are both on the board of Ypal. Can you explain to us what that organization is, what you guys do, and what are its goals?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So Ypal is a young professional organization here in town that has about 1,000 active members. Our primary mission is to connect, engage, and develop the young professionals in the city of Louisville and the surrounding region, mainly with the goal of, looking towards the next 20 years of the city's existence. So one of the reasons why Ypal was formed as an organization in the first place was to really counteract what was known as brain drain back in the early 2000s. There were a lot of really successful individuals that just were leaving Louisville. People who had grown up here, who had maybe gone to school here for college, And, after they graduated, they decided, well, we're going to leave Louisville. We don't want to be here anymore. The city really took that and decided, well, we need to kind of counteract that. And Ypal was formed. We're unique in the aspect of we're not tied to the Chamber of Commerce. We're not tied to, the mayor's office or GLI. We're our own independent organization. So, where a lot of people will just get funding from the city government, we go out. We have sponsors. We partner with people in the community. And our real mission is just to help young professionals, stay here, to retain talent, to recruit talent, and to ultimately, help in any way we can to better the young professionals of the city of Louisville.
And I'll add a little bit of color to what Rudy said. So connect, engage, develop, those are the three things that we really try to do. But what exactly does that mean? So we try to connect our members with others, whether that be other young professionals groups, other businesses, other young professionals themselves, starting to develop that network that, hopefully our members will go on and be tomorrow's leaders, so to speak. And honestly, in today's day and age, many are today's leaders as well. But we go beyond just mere connection, and we want to engage with those new people, engage with the city in a way that some people don't. And, I think it's easy growing up here to go through the motions and to take things for granted without really seeing all the wonderful things that the community has to offer. So we want to change that. We want to plug people in. Maybe it's serving on boards. Maybe it's peeking behind the scenes. That's one of our series right now, to just see what's going on over at Lou City Soccer or what's going on at Churchill Downs. So we have various events like that. Lunch for 11, where we bring maybe a C-suite type of person, and 10 other Ypal members get to have lunch with them and just pick their brain. And then lastly, develop. We do the Emerging Leaders Program, which I went through a few years ago. We also have Accelerate workshops and various other educational panels and experiences.
Clearly, I'd say Ypal is trying to create this new culture and community for young professionals and cultivate business and career development. But statistics after statistics kind of show that people are not young professionals are not coming to Louisville at the same rate that it is for our peer cities. And quite frankly, it's kind of flatlined since the 80s in Louisville. Do you think is that what you all see? Do you see that there's a lack of young professionals currently in Louisville, or a trend of them leaving the city?
I can start with this one. I think, of course, there are some young professionals who leave. I mean, we have friends and things like that. I did. I went to Nashville. But that type of thing happens everywhere. People move in 2020 and beyond. What I love to see is people coming back, people coming and sticking. And so that's people from small towns, people from big cities who come and never really knew what Louisville was, but found their people, found their place, and stay here. Or people like me who left and came back. And, I always had that draw. Even going, if I could have just a sidebar on Nashville, that was obviously a very interesting place to be at the time. It was growing so rapidly. But when we came back to Louisville, we realized how well the city compares in a lot of things that were important to me. So, you hear cost of living is one thing. In fact, Louisville Business First put out a poll today that said Louisville was one of the, I can't remember, top 20 or something like that, cities for young professionals, and in large part because of cost of living. I feel like we've heard that, but I have seen it. I have friends right now in Nashville who are trying to buy houses and literally cannot. They're putting offers in at asking price and can't even buy a house. Mm-hmm. So there are people making lots of money in Nashville, on real estate and other things, but it's hard for a young professional to get in and get started. That's not true for Louisville. I think you can come in here and immediately plug into the community, plug in, like I said, with real estate, have an investment, start accruing wealth and things that way. So all that to say as well, Nashville has become this national brand. Well, they've got music. Well, we've got bourbon and horses. There are lots of similarities in the food scene. Of course, we've got the bourbon as well. So all that I'm trying to say there is I think that we compare very favorably, and we can talk about, other things with career opportunities. But for me, in my career, I can do virtually everything that I want to do in Louisville, whether that be working on $100 million plus deals at a law firm, working in-house for a Fortune 500 company, or working for some of the most influential government leaders in the country, whether that be Senate Majority Leader, Chair of the House Budget Committee. Those opportunities are here. Now, I would concede we need more. We need more of those opportunities. But I would push back a little bit on the premise in those ways.
Rudy, do you have anything to add, or?
Yeah, and I can't really attest to things that happened in the 80s because I wasn't alive back.
Fair enough.
But I can attest to the last 10 years and, what I've seen from going away from college for college to Bloomington and coming back. Louisville was a completely different place between the years of 2008 and 2012. I have two sisters that one is in law school at Ypal now. One is an undergrad at University of Louisville. And I blatantly told them, when I came back, University of Louisville didn't have the great things that they have now. I think that university really has taken off in the past 10 years. And, it's not a perfect university. It definitely has its flaws and it's got things that it needs to improve upon. But I think overall, that has been a big selling point to the city. I've also noticed that a lot of my friends that, kind of what John had said earlier, that went away to different cities, that, they went to Chicago, they went to New York, they went to LA, even Nashville or even Cincinnati. And they realized, how much they missed the city of Louisville and being close to their family and how easy it is to live in the city. But also, they really wanted to come back and invest in the city. So I think that, you'll see a lot of other people come back. As far as attracting talent, I think that is, something that not only the city of Louisville is struggling with, I think that is something that every city struggles with as far as, you want to attract talent, but I would make the argument that Nashville isn't necessarily attracting the best talent. I think a lot of my friends that live there now and that, have lived there in the past are all wanting to leave. I think Cincinnati has its own issues. I think that Indianapolis has its own issues. And I think that moving forward, you're going to see that geography is not the most important thing for your job. Louisville was just rated the number 6 city, I think it was 6 overall in the United States as far as being able to remotely work from home. And I think that's huge because I'm sure you all have friends that live in other cities, but for the last 4 months decided, well, I'm just going to come home and, shelter in place with my family. And they've been able to do exactly what they've wanted to do. So, you take an industry like law. I mean, my law firm has 22 different locations around the United States, and I practice with those different people. I don't have to be in an office. I mean, we're proving throughout this whole pandemic that you can go to court virtually. Probably is going to be a little different for trials, but, I think that the fact that, the cost of living is so low here, the ease of living is great. And if more people are able to work remotely, I think that's really going to benefit the city of Louisville.
And I hate to keep talking about Nashville, but that's my frame of reference. And I think you mentioned peer cities. I think we should be trying to learn from and see what some of these cities like Nashville are doing. to me, I think the mindset is important. And so, you talk about it being a culture issue. Well, I think Louisville is great. What we should aim for is sustainable growth. Nashville's was so rapid that it was almost hard for the city to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to look back and without doing a full business analysis, because that's not my background. But when I try to armchair quarterback it a little bit, it seems to me that Nashville became a cool place to live. Austin became a cool place to live, and businesses then followed. So, I think that Louisville has a lot of that going. Derby has blown up to be, obviously it's always been a huge event and something that we're proud of, but it's never been bigger. And the culture and the things around bourbon, I think give us something to build on. And if we can start convincing young professionals that they want to be here, then it might actually be that the business and opportunities follow that rather than the other way around. And so that's why, speaking of that mindset, I hate seeing when we don't aspire to grow or to be better. And so whether it's people fighting Topgolf or the NBA or whatever the case may be, and we could count the missed opportunities in the past just because people weren't interested in changing the status quo. I do think that mindset plays a role.
Well, I hear what you're both saying, and honestly, I think I pretty much agree. If you look at the Louisville of today versus 5, 10, 15 years ago, there's no question we're changing, and I think mostly it's kind of going in the right direction. But in terms of going forward in the future, what areas do you think we could improve upon in Louisville? What do you think we could add to this city that would attract that young talent and help us retain those professionals?
I think this is low-hanging fruit, but technology companies. Obviously, we're living through an era where what you have and what your technology is basically, can you survive, or is your business going to go out of business? So I think that, in the future, technology companies, I think there's a lot of great young professionals that have started technology companies here in town who have degrees from Louisville schools. I'll just give a shout out to Switcher Studios as one of them. They do a ton of work for companies that want to do Facebook Live broadcasting. I think that's something. The biggest thing for me that I think we need to foster the companies here. I think too often you see that somebody will start a business here, but then move their company to Silicon Valley because they think they have to be out there, or else they're never going to get the funding to make their company work. And I really think what the city needs to do better is we have an issue in this town where Louisville companies don't get funding from Louisville investors. They get funding from Silicon Valley, New York City people. I mean, we're not keeping the money here, and our investors here want to invest in companies that are in Silicon Valley and New York and Nashville and Chicago. And, I went on the Glide trip, which GLI puts on every year. And that's the one big takeaway that I had, was that we have a lot of great ideas here locally for companies. One of the biggest issues is that we kind of overlook them because they're in our backyard. And I think that's something that we need to change as a community. And, we talk about, buy local, keep Louisville local, but I think we need to start walking the walk. We've been talking it for a while, but I think we need to, really start putting our money where our mouth is.
Well, and what you're saying is that I like the more parallel of it sounds like Louisvillians will pay and support that mom and pop shop that's been around for 20 years, but the company that is trying to grow and scale and become a national, international brand very, very quickly, there's more hesitancy in the local investment in that. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, because I think we almost hold ourselves back sometimes. We think, oh, well, we're just little old Louisville, and if we've come up with an idea, then surely somebody else has come up with one. But, that's not productive thinking. I think in order for us to grow, I mean, to be completely frank, I don't want to be Nashville. I think that Nashville has grown too quickly, and they're starting to see some of the issues that they have there, one of which is cost of living. But what I think is that in order to foster some of these businesses, I mean, there's no reason why a company that is here should have to go and look for money elsewhere. We need to do a better job of getting investors here in town to buy into the ideas and foster the businesses that are already here. And, that also goes with, I think that the mayor and, obviously this is not applicable when there's a worldwide pandemic going on, but I think that the governor and the mayor should be each month flying out to Silicon Valley and recruiting some of these companies back. The cost of living, as we've said multiple times, is so low here. It is so affordable to rent space to run your company compared to Northern California, where, I have a friend that just moved from Northern California to Chicago because she and her husband, who both have six-figure salaries, can't afford to live there anymore. Now that to me is absurd. So if we can find some of these people to bring them in, I mean, I don't think that the way you build a town is by recruiting Fortune 500 companies. I think that the way that you grow a town is kind of how Austin has, where you find, one or two companies that have a great idea and you keep them there and you let them grow and you recruit talent to work for those companies. And ultimately the community will be better because of it.
Rudy, I rent my house out on Airbnb for Derby. And for the first few years that I did it, I rented it to a family from San Francisco. And one of their favorite games was to drive around the city with Zillow pulled up and just marvel at the price of real estate. They just could not imagine, the types of homes that you could get for the price here, and also the space in between houses, which they appreciated. But back to the question, though, you all talk about attracting and retaining young professionals. Well, I think that too often we lump that in, and it's kind of the talking point, and we don't really think about what it means. Well, attract and retain are two different things. Retaining, if you have a customer with your company, if you have a client, if you have a member, it's easier to keep that person than go out and get somebody new. So where do we start? I think we need great schools, K through 12, and frankly, even before K, preschool education and things like that. We need great universities, and then we need great job opportunities. So we keep people here. Don't give them a reason to leave. As far as attracting, I do think Rudy hit on a couple different industries. Another one that I saw pop up is e-commerce, especially amidst the pandemic. Things are dramatically changing, and Louisville is very well positioned to be an e-commerce leader. Literally, they're talking about adding millions of square feet of industrial space for an e-commerce purpose. That is something because of our geography, because of the UPS Worldport, which I think is the number 2 or 3 busiest hub in the world. We are very well positioned to do that. We're within a 6-hour drive of a majority of the American people, so on and so forth. And other things too, like healthcare and some of our other industries that I think we do a good job in. The last thing I would say on that is I think that we need to dream big. We have to push the envelope a little bit. And so maybe the NBA is an example of something like that, where we need an investment in a big thing to put us more, saying we're planting our flag as a player with all of these other peer cities. And frankly, we have done that in the arts. We do compete. We have an orchestra, we have an opera, ballet, actors theater. Obviously, we could go on and on and on. And that is something that I think our city is proud of and does a good job of promoting. but we don't need to stop there.
So that actually leads me right into my next question. You all have given some great ideas on things we can focus on. What do you all think about maybe the amenities arms race that you're kind of seeing from cities across the country? Should we be investing in adding a botanical garden or maybe an aquarium or pro sports, or trying to have these different like almost bucket list items so that we can stack up more when we're competing for talent? I think you're seeing that as an example. So what do you all think about that mentality?
Absolutely, because it's multifaceted. So you've got the tourism aspect of giving people a reason to come here, giving them something to do while they're here. We're doing an excellent job, pre-pandemic, and will continue, have even gotten some big conferences and things amidst the pandemic. We bring a lot of people into town. We have interstates that have a lot of people driving through. Let's give them a reason to come and spend their dollars here, in addition to exactly what we've been talking about with making it a compelling case for young professionals and families and citizens of our community to have things to do, to want to stay.
Rudy, anything else?
I would echo that. I mean, I think that when you start talking about bucket lists, you've got to you have to look at them as each one individual thing, as opposed to we have to have all of them. And I think that this year alone has shown that there some I think should take priority over others. So I've said it numerous times about technology, high-speed internet. I mean, we have to have that here, or else businesses aren't going to thrive. They're not going to want to be here if we don't have the infrastructure for them to compete and to succeed. Outside of what we're dealing with now, you got to have hotels. You have to have a lot of hotels in downtown Louisville. And I think that what we've seen over the last 5 years is we've seen a large influx of hotels in order to compete for conventions and for things to be hosted at our brand new convention center downtown. You couple that with things like the Bourbon Trail and things that we already have with horse racing, if you want to go and do that. And I think that the logical next step is pro sports. We've got Louisville City. I'm an avid fan. I love going to their games. I would love to see an NBA team here in town. I'm extremely excited about the women's team coming to town. I think that's a huge step, because that, to no fault of any other organization here in town, that is the first professional top league team that we've got. And I think that is huge. I think that when we try to get some of these bigger companies to move to town, that's one of the first things that is on the list is, well, what do you have for my employees to do when they're not working? This is something that's really important for that. I think we have a great art scene. I think that's something that is not maybe as well known, but when people get here to town, they love going to the arts here. The Kentucky Center for the Arts is great. I think that, we have all the main plays. They stop through Louisville. So I think we already have a lot. I think we just need to continue to grow in that. And I think that pro sports is the natural progression past what we've already done. So I really hope that is something that we can accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, and if I could piggyback on that too, we talk about sports, and I previously talked about education. I think one thing that could fly under the radar and could really be important is Bellarmine moving to D1. And so you get sports. Obviously, U of L and UK sports are huge, not only because of the diehard fans, but it's big business. There's a lot of money pumping into the economy because of them and because of hosting other, NCAA tournaments and things like that. Well, Bellarmine has a fantastic basketball product, and I think being able to go D1 will hopefully help them continue to grow and become more of a national name. I got my master's when I was in Nashville from Lipscomb University. There's Belmont University. All of those schools that 10, 20 years ago were significantly smaller, and I can see Bellarmine on a similar trajectory. I hope that Bellarmine can get there, just to the place where like a Belmont is today. But I think as far as education goes as well, Nashville is not just relying on Vanderbilt to produce talent. They've got several other schools that are large and pumping out graduates, like those three that I've mentioned, Tennessee State and others. Now, of course, we've got Sullivan and Spalding and some others, IU Southeast, in addition to the University of Louisville here in town. But that's just an example. I think that we need some of those other schools to step up, because we can't expect U of L to meet the entire need of the city.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. There are some people that don't like the idea of Bellarmine going Division I, but I'm on board with you that I think ultimately it raises their athletic profile, which in turn raises their academic profile. So I think a lot of things that you all said make a lot of sense. But with that said, let's inverse this conversation for a second and kind of look at it. What would the city gain from getting more well-trained young professionals?
I think that you improve drastically the next 20 years of the city's existence if you have more young professionals here, especially if they're, well-trained and highly educated young professionals. I think that's kind of why Ypal was founded 20 years ago. Was, we know we're not going to solve this problem overnight. But if we, we put a lot of work into it, that we'll see, we plant the seed and we're going to see it grow in 20 years. So if you get, the creme de la creme at age 22 and you convince them to stay here and you get them to invest into the community, and love Louisville as much as everybody here loves Louisville. I think in 20 years, 2040 comes around, who's to say that we don't have a lot of the things that we've already talked about? Maybe we have 2 pro franchises. I mean, maybe we've got, an additional Fortune 500 company here. Maybe it's Bellarmine, we're moving Spalding in Division I. I mean, who knows? I think that when you have some of the younger people that are influxed into the community, especially ones that want to be here, want to give back, and are intelligent individuals, that's the community is just going to reap all of the benefits from that. And I think that the city of Louisville will grow and will continue to become a place that not only the 4 of us love living in, but that we can recruit others. I think that this kind of goes back to an earlier question, but kind of a barrier that we have here is, unfortunately, people hear Louisville and they say, okay, but then they hear Kentucky and they get this bad image in their brain. And then they may have never, ever come here before. They may have just heard of Kentucky and they think of fried chicken and that's it. But what I've found is that when you bring people here, especially to the city of Louisville, they fall in love with it. I have friends from New York who love to come down here because they just think that Louisville is one of the coolest places. I would be surprised if there are many people out there who come to the city, spend some time here, know some people, and leave thinking that they had a terrible time. I mean, this city is, I think, Rick Pitino said it the best. He had only planned on being in Lexington and in the state of Kentucky for a couple of years, but he fell in love with it. It's just a beautiful place. The people are great. And there really is a lot, for everybody in this community. So you influx more young people who are very talented and motivated, and that's only going to make this place better.
Well, and I think one other U of L personality that came to my mind was Teddy Bridgewater, who came up here from Miami expecting to be living on a horse farm. And that's obviously not what the city of Louisville is. It's much more than that. We've got those things, and they're something that we're proud of. But, we are that's an example of the perception being a little bit off. I think, in short, to answer your question, when you have more well-trained young professionals in the city, you've got a broader investor pool to address some of those venture capital things that we were talking about earlier. You've got more business leaders. You've got more businesses. They're either starting new businesses or helping create enough of a nucleus to where other businesses are going to want to locate here. And then when I say you've got more investors, that's not just in business, but that's also in, okay, now we've got dollars, that discretionary dollars that we want to spend. And so there are other opportunities that would come because of that.
So we're getting short on time here, guys. We only got a couple more questions for you, but could you just give us one more time, once the young professionals move into the city, once people, graduate from college and they start to enter the professional career, how can they get involved with Ypal? And you've hit on this before, but can you just give us like the benefits of joining that group one more time?
Yeah, so it's extremely easy to join. Go to our website, ypal.org, sign up, put your information in there. You'll get a weekly email every Tuesday. It kind of tells you exactly what's going on. Primarily, we have in-person events. We have transitioned to entirely virtual events since March. But I mean, really, what the benefits are is that we show you why Louisville is such a great place to live, to work, and to play. We always love highlighting new places in town, especially restaurants and bars that open up. We engage the young professionals with some of the community leaders that otherwise they may have trouble getting in touch with. You think of some of the CEOs or, community leaders that we have here in town. And we provide a big value to young professionals and to businesses in the fact that we offer some programming and leadership programs that otherwise companies don't really offer. So I think of our Emerging Leaders program, which, teaches everybody exactly, how to use your type of leadership skill and maybe how to leverage that skill in what you do. We host programs that a series that we call Accelerate. It's we take a topic. The one that comes to mind the most is, how to deal with a difficult person at work. I'm pretty sure everyone has dealt with that before. But maybe we didn't know how to, or, how to best publicly speak or how to tell a story effectively. So we try to fill the void, because you get out of school and all you're doing is learning in school. You get out of school and you're still learning, but maybe you haven't learned those sharp skills that would be necessary for you to take the next step forward. So we try to sit there and help young professionals get through some of those challenges, because ultimately, if they get through those challenges and they're able to help their employer, and help the community, we're all going to become better because of it.
I think for me, I got access to a totally different network. So everyone, on this, in this interview is an attorney. And so I was comfortable running in some of those circles, had lots of relationships all across the city with attorneys, but this helped put me into some different circles, more business centered circles, but also a lot of other things as well. Nathan Shanks, the president, last year wanted to expand Ypal's reach into manufacturing and other industries like that. So I would say totally different networks with both young professionals and business leaders. And I know, for Rudy and I, it might be rare for us growing up here. We think that we know everybody in town. And then you come to an organization like Ypal and you realize that it's this 1 million person metropolitan area. And as many people as we feel like we know, there are all these other networks out there that at least for me personally, I had not previously been exposed to. So I think that's one thing that I would encourage, even people who feel plugged in and connected in the city, you should check it out, because you'll meet a totally different group of people in a lot of ways. And also, one other just tangible benefit, you got the opportunity to apply for big scholarships to U of L, to Bellarmine, and every year we give out to Ypal members really significant dollars to further your education. So that is one example of a tangible benefit. But I wanted you to know that there were specific tangible benefits as well as all of the intangibles that we've discussed.
And especially for people that are from the city of Louisville originally, I almost see membership in YPAL as, you know, you're kind of doing your service as an ambassador for the city. There are often a lot of times when, you know, I'll go to an event, I'll meet someone and they're from Chicago or they're from Miami, Florida, and they've moved to Louisville and they don't know anyone. And I think that, you know, this is also something that kind of holds us back, is that we all love talking about where we went to high school. And, you know, I had a friend that moved down here from IU. He was from Carmel, Indiana. And every time we went out, someone was like, "Oh, where'd you go to high school? Where'd you go to high school?" And it got to the point where he was just so sick of people asking him. He just said, "Oh yeah, I went to St. X. I graduated in 2008." And, you know, he had some looks from some people being like, I don't recognize you. You don't look familiar. So, you know, I think that if you're from Louisville, one of the reasons that if you want the city to grow, see YPAL as being an ambassador for the city. You know, meeting people who aren't from here, who don't know where the old White Castle in St. Matthews used to be, or, you know, they don't call it the Summit because it's not called that, or they don't know what the Aegon Tower is. So, you know, it's almost to me, at least I view it as I'm being an ambassador for the city. I mean, I want people to come here and enjoy it and like it and love it as much as I do. So, you know, I think that YPAL does a great job of showing people, you know, cool things that are going on in our community, new places that have opened, and it gives them it gives people a medium to meet people. Because when you move to a different city, especially one like Louisville, where everyone is so tight knit, it's sometimes hard to get acclimated and to really find a good group of people. But, you know, I'm hopeful, and I think that I've seen a lot of people who aren't from here originally who come to a YPAL event, and then they immediately have a new group of friends, and that helps to keep those people here.
Well, I think it's a really good point, and I hate to do it, but we need to cut it off here. Before we let you guys go, we like to ask all of our guests this final question. If you had the power to change one thing, one policy in Louisville, what would it be? Let's start with you, Rudy.
I mean, I love democracy. I would probably say the amount of time allotted to zoning meetings and public comment, because we just see what happens with Topgolf. I mean, perfect example of something really cool that could come to Louisville. But we got a lot of people that want to fight it because they're afraid that, you know, that they might see one light from, you know, off in the distance, or it may be kind of loud, or, you know, oh God, the traffic. We always complain about the traffic here in town, but we don't have traffic. So I think that maybe the length of some of these zoning meetings, I would probably change that.
What a legal inside baseball answer.
No, I liked it though. I like that. And I'm with you. We don't have traffic. Having lived in Lexington, dealt with Nicholasville Road at 5 o'clock, like there's no comparable comparison here in Louisville.
Our traffic is an extra 5 minutes onto your commute.
Yeah.
One of my best friends lived in Atlanta, and I was driving through, and I said, "Hey, we're coming through at this time. Want to stop by and say hey." Hadn't seen him for, you know, probably a year at that point, and he said, "Nope." And I'm like, "Okay, haha, very funny. Where do you want to meet?" And he's like, "No, like I'm actually not going to leave my house because it would take me 2 hours to go see you and 2 hours to get back," or something like that. So,
oh yeah.
That's madness. For me, if I could do one thing, I'd have to consider. So maybe something that Ypal has endorsed in the past. We tried to bring, Amazon or Topgolf or indoor sports gaming. Those things are nice. Like better fixed mass transportation, especially connecting Nulu and the West End. Maybe a local option sales tax, environmental justice. I think
you get one, John. You get one.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. I think we got a chance to lead in policing. I think expanded voting or something like that. But if I could only choose one, and I'm going to, you say if you had the power to change, so I'm going to pretend that I've got a magic wand.
Oh yeah.
And I think redlining is potentially the thing that has been most destructive to the city, and that has continued some of the de facto segregation that we have today. And if we could go back in time and change that, I think that we would be really well served. Now, I don't know the answers since I don't have a magic wand, for how to address some of those issues. But I'll tell you what I'm trying to do is, rather than me give the answer, I'm trying to listen. I'm trying to learn. And, hopefully that's something that we can all do right now. Because as we have seen, our community and members of our community and others across the country are standing up and demanding that their voices will be heard. And I think that's something that we could do too. So again, I could try to prescribe a solution, but for me right now, I think I'm just going to listen and learn.
Absolutely. I appreciate both of your all's times. Those were great answers, and we really enjoyed this conversation. So thanks for joining us, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having us. We really appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Talk to you guys soon.
We'll pick back up with our reaction segment after a word from our sponsor.
Well, Luke, that was another interesting interview that we had today. I enjoyed their optimism about Louisville. I'm very passionate about Louisville myself, but I also like how they kind of at least acknowledge some of the stark realities of growing cities, especially the midsize. I think that the kind of the bucket list arms race where everyone is trying to get amenities to compete with each other, whether that's pro sports or different concert venues or other areas of entertainment. They're trying, every cities are trying to really compete with each other just from those amenity standpoint.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, like things like bike lanes, affordable housing, like job opportunities. Those are things that younger people really want. It seems that Louisville's at least trying, they understand, what they need to do. And I think they're trying to move in the right direction.
Well, employers are looking at doing more of those or looking more for those items when they're selecting cities that they may move their company towards, right?
Well, yeah, but why are employers looking for it? It's because that's the best way to attract young employees.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Now, with that said, to flip that a little bit, I am intrigued, and I'm not sure, they talked about it a little bit, but I do really think, and I'm not sure why this is, but I think Louisville is more accessible between people and business leaders than most cities. I mean, I couldn't imagine trying to go find a random CEO in New York City and trying to just track them down and be like, oh, hey, do you want to have a coffee? I mean, I just don't see that happening as much as you can actually do that in Louisville.
Yeah, no, I mean, it feels like the business community in Louisville is definitely more accessible. Like you kind of brush elbows with these people in like your day-to-day activities. It's a small enough city, that it just doesn't seem like there's some serious impediment to try and make those kinds of connections.
So then why is Louisville not necessarily losing young professionals, but not attracting them or retaining them at the same rate as our peer cities?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting distinction that you kind of made there. It's not necessarily that we're losing. It is just we're failing to grow our young professional base at the same rate as our peers. There have probably not been enough articles written about this. In preparing for today's episode, rather than a white paper, I actually just picked a few articles from the Courier Journal that tied in really well with the topics at hand. The one I would refer anyone to when we're talking about losing some millennial workers, or excuse me, not attracting millennial workers, would be millennial workers choosing Austin, Nashville, and Raleigh over Louisville, and it was written Alfred Miller. Sorry, but no, basically, the arguments that were made are we don't have, although we have enough job openings, that it looks, from 1,000 yards here, like we're competing with all of our peer cities. When you actually look at the breakdown in the type of jobs on offer, we're probably focusing a little too much on like manufacturing or like labor intensive jobs, when other cities, that we seem to be losing out in the race for this talent to are actually focusing on more like tech sector and healthcare related jobs.
Well, I think, and we should have plenty of healthcare related jobs, but there does seem to be a dearth of tech talent in this city.
Oh, no question.
And to go back to your other point about manufacturing, I think that stems from the history of Louisville. I mean, in the Gilded Age, Louisville became a massive manufacturing plant. And the Gilded Age was like the late 1800s, early 1900s. And it was just after the Civil War. There were so many, there weren't as many options for the South for their manufacturing. And so Louisville kind of became an epicenter of manufacturing. And I think that stigma, I don't necessarily want to say stigma, but that business type has kind of stuck with Louisville ever since.
Yeah, no, that sector's floundered while like tech has absolutely boomed, And I thought an interesting statistic I found in that article, Austin, Nashville, and Raleigh all had a smaller population than Louisville in 1980, which just seems insane to think about now when you look at, Nashville or you look at Austin. Austin's, just massive. And it easily could have been like the reliance on like the manufacturing sector. Other than that, it's tough to say.
But there's a lot of factors. I mean, Atlanta was smaller than us in the 60s until they got the Delta Airport hub, right? And so that there's a lot of factors that go into this, but I think the one common theme, I think John hit on this a little bit, we just need the pivot is education, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look at what Nashville has in their university pool versus ours. They have more, I would say, Division I universities. They have most of their universities are probably slightly higher ranked, and they're probably so. I mean, he mentioned Belmont. They have Lipscomb nearby. They have Vanderbilt. And that's what to me is so good about Bellarmine going to the Division I level, because name me a city that doesn't have a major city that doesn't have two Division I universities. It's difficult to find. There's a couple that probably fit it, but then they have universities nearby. So I do think that the higher education, we really do need to start promoting our universities.
Yeah. It's not just the sports. What you're really talking about is the visibility.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like when Butler went to the Final Four back-to-back years, they had a lot more applications than they'd ever had in the history of their university.
Or Florida Gulf Coast, their enrollment just skyrocketed after the deep tournament run.
So that's the type of thing where you just have athletics is just part of the vehicle, and if they don't get to use it as a vehicle to grow their university or up their academic profile, well then they don't. But it is part of the equation into expanding education portfolios of cities.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, in our city, we've seen there's definitely a desire on the part of the city government to try and attract that younger talent. Mm-hmm. We know, as you mentioned, healthcare is something that we kind of focus on, although there might be cities that they're beating us out on that. Like we've got Humana, we've got a lot of great hospitals around the region. We have a need for nurses. I know that we have a need for doctors. And a part of that is Louisville has a relatively kind of older population. About 6.2% of Louisville's population is 75 or older. You compare that to Austin, it's just 3.7. And so what Mayor Fisher has actually proposed is he labels it the silver tsunami to kind of make Louisville a leader in geriatric care, to try and bring in, younger talent in the healthcare sector to try and accommodate like the older generation that, currently makes up Louisville's population.
Well, and we're a healthcare center right now, right? I mean, we have major healthcare companies in this field. I don't see that going away anytime soon. So I think it's, again, like we talked about urbanism in another episode, it's important to kind of capitalize on what we're doing well right now.
Yeah.
But to get back to the other point of education, I believe you had another article that talked about, more disconnected youth. And that goes to just the whole development of our population, not just the higher education, but the lower tier education as well, right?
Yeah, and this was a real problem, and it was, unfortunately, we didn't really address it as well as we probably could have in our discussion with the Ypal guys. But, in all of this discussion about attracting young talent, we can't really overlook the population we do have. Louisville has almost 17,000 young people that qualify as disconnected. That's
staggering.
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. And it represents, 16 to 24-year-olds that are not in the education system and currently don't have a full-time job. And so it's, or don't have a job, excuse me. And that poses a tremendous financial burden on the city. They're going to have to down the road pay, into that's going to increase crime rates. That's going to increase healthcare costs. That's going to increase, all of the public services that, people would be able to provide for themselves were they, more engaged in the economy. And what we're seeing with that population, the disconnected youth, in the early 2000s, there was an outreach program actually to try and target this demographic. It was run predominantly by Kentuckiana Works. They're actually sending recruiters out into the field, like the areas that were hardest hit by, this kind of disconnected problem, attempting to draw these youths into programs that might, set them up for success, kind of put them on the right track. But when the federal grant that funded that kind of program started to dry up, so did a lot of the recruiting work. They went from being a real beneficiary of those federal dollars to once again being kind of overlooked by the system. And it's super unfortunate.
And so I think what we saw most recently is Louisville just became a promise city in that they are now giving free tuition to 2-year college degree, technical credentials, or other workforce certifications for all JCPS graduating students.
Yeah.
And that's after tuition and fees that's not paid for by other scholarships or federal or state grants. But it's still making sure that those 2-year degrees are going to start, or I guess workforce training is actually going to start occurring so that you have fewer of these disconnected youths. At least that's the hope, right? Yeah. It's giving kids more of an incentive to graduate high school and finish out.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's a great step in the right direction. We've seen other cities, they've been setting up, they'll call them re-engagement hubs, or they might come under a different title, but essentially it's like a centralized location where, social workers and people aimed at trying to reinvigorate that disconnected community are located. There's a lot of resources. There's money flowing in from the city to try and cultivate that untapped potential, like that workforce that like we just aren't engaging with. And if we could better serve them, then they can better serve our community, and it just makes sense to try and do what we can there.
But to be clear, I think what we're hitting with this discussion today is that there are two angles that need to be hit if we're going to start competing, right? Education at both the higher education and the developmental programs from pre-K, kindergarten, all the way up, right?
Yeah.
But you also still have to do the competition for bigger jobs. I mean, to get the next Humana or to keep the next Humana here, you have to get the different amenities. You have to have a botanical garden. You need to get an aquarium or have a really world-class zoo, which we have, right? But you have to start going after these amenities as much as possible to to attract and retain talent. So it is both twofold, and they are not mutually exclusive.
No, for sure.
But with that said, I think that's all we have left to talk about today, unless you have anything else.
No, that's it for me.
So before we get out of here, we have one more thing we want to talk about, and that is the Ypal guys decided to give us a promo code so that you, our listeners, can get $10 off a 1-year membership if you put in the code YPAL10. That is YPAL10. YPAL10 will get you a $10 off coupon for a 1-year membership with Ypal. Their next event is coming up on September 23rd, which is called Ypal 101, where you'll get to learn all about what they do and how you can get involved. Anything else you got to add there, Luke?
No, that's it for me. Thanks for coming and listening with us, guys.
Yep, thanks.
As always, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us on Building This Community. If you'd like any more information, you can follow us on Twitter at BuildingThisCom, COM, or you can follow Andrew
at Andrew J. Klump. And you can also follow Luke
at LMP43. Definitely subscribe, and we look forward to talking to you guys next week.